Okay, I want to give you a little bit of my chauffeur here. I know women don't blow chauffeur and not that vital, but it's good to know some of the halachas of the chauffeur. Before we get to that, I want to let you know that if you would look into the Torah, you'd find that there's only an obligation to blow 9 sounds. Where do we get this 9 sounds from? The Torah says, it's in Vayikra, the Har, you are to pass through a teruah. Okay, now do you know what the 3 sounds are called? The plain one, the going goes, that's a tekiah. That's when a person can't talk because they're full of anxiety, or not anxiety is the right word. Not suppressed. There's a word you can't put your feelings in words. You scream. You scream, and then you get even more heartbroken. You start groaning. Then you get even more heartbroken. You can hardly breathe, and you go da 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 da. So it goes da 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 da. Here. So tekiah is the plain one. There's no breakdown. Shvarim is the groaning sound that has 3 stops. Da da da. And the trua has 9 little sounds. Da da da. A minimum of 9. You can have more, but you can't get less than 9. Da, 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 da. Now, these have a name, so I'll soon tell you where we get this from. How do we know how to make the sounds? But let's discuss first. It's good to know the origin of, it doesn't say in the Torah very clearly how many sounds to make. So how do we know? The answer is, it does say, the Torah says, pass through, v'ha'avartem, pass a sound. A passing sound means a sound that has no breakdown, just a plain, simple, flowing sound from your mouth. That's the tekiah, the first one. Then the Torah says, blow a trua. Now, even though on the board over there, the trua is the lamenting sound. When you're crying and you can't catch your breath, the small ones, the 9 small ones called in Halacha language, shumitin. Shumitin are the small little sobbing sounds, not the groaning sound, like a person who's sick, but rather breakdown. That's called shumitin. And we call that trua. But when the Torah says trua, it's not very clear. The Torah meant our trua, or the Torah meant actually our groaning sound, or a combination of both. It's all derived from a story that happened in Tanakh. I'll skip the story because it's a long story. But it's based on the question, when the Torah says trua, what exactly is it supposed to sound like? So we do all 3 methods. We do the lamenting sound, we do the groaning sound, and then we do both together, just to cover all bases. Now, the Torah also says, after it says to blow the breakdown sound, it says, again, pass through a sound. So we know that you have to blow a simple sound, plain, a sound that has a breakdown. We're not sure what the breakdown is. Is it a groaning sound, or is it a lamenting sound, sobbing, or is it a combination of both? But we do know that you have to blow that breakdown sound. And then we also know that following the middle one, the breakdown, there has to be again a tekiah. Tekiah, whatever's in the middle, and then a tekiah again. Now, and the Torah says to do it 3 times. We do learn that it mentions 3 times in the Chumash to blow these 3 sounds. That would make 9. But we're not sure the nature of the middle sound. See, the middle sound over here on the board is this one, the one that's in parentheses. This one's clear, this one's clear. The middle sound has 3 versions. First, we do both, all of them together. Then we do just the shvarim. The shvarim is the groaning sound. Then we do just the true of the lamenting sound. Now, if you count 3 times this, 3 times this, 3 times this, you get a total of 30. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You add, if you do it 3 times, this is 9. This would be again 9. This would be 12. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 3 is 9. 12 plus 9 is 30. So that's how we know you have to blow 30 sounds. And we do that right after the laning, the Kriyas HaTorah. So that's 30. How many sounds we actually blow on Rosh Hashanah? Not 30, a lot more. How many? 100. Where do you get the 100 from? So the answer is we actually blow another 30 in the Shmona Esrei. It has a name to it. It's called Kiyos de Ma'uma, the standing ones. While we're standing Shmona Esrei, the first ones were when everyone can sit if you want. Nobody's sitting, but if you want, you can sit, because we're not davening Shmona Esrei. We're in the, we're still before Shmona Esrei. That's the first 30 sounds. Then you make 30 more sounds in the middle, in the quiet Shmona Esrei. There's 3 places to stop. You'll notice that the chazan, not the chazan, but somebody makes a bang on the table. Stop wherever you are. Listen to the shofar in the quiet Shmona Esrei, and there are we do it together with the quiet and the repetition, and then after the Shmona Esrei, there's in the middle of a kaddish, we blow again, that adds up to another 30. So there's 30 plus 30 plus 30. 30 in the quiet Shmona Esrei, 30 in the repetition, 30 before Shmona Esrei, it makes 90. And then after everything's over in the kaddish, we do 10 more. So again, 30 before we daven Shmona Esrei, 30 in the quiet Shmona Esrei, 30 in the repetition, that's 90, and 10 more sounds in the middle of the kaddish following Shmona Esrei. That's how we get 100. Now, I want to just mention a few halachas of the shofar to know that you're hearing it right. I hear in 770 people blowing, they don't know how to blow the shofar. Not that I'm the greatest blower, but I know when someone's blowing it according to halacha or not. The shvar, the groaning sound, has to sound with 3 groans, not 2 groans. Da, da, da. And the custom is that after you hear the 3 groans, there's another little tiny sound. That's a custom. But the main thing is da, 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 and then someone goes da right after the 3. But if you go da, 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 which people do, you know that you were not yoyed to the mitzvah of shofar. Because every groaning sound has to have 3 breakdowns. What is the length? How long does the tekiah have to be? The tekiah has to be, so the tekiah, which is this sound over here, has to be as long as the middle sound. Now, how long is the middle sound? Well, shvarim is da, 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 and this is da, 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 da. That's pretty long. So the tekiah has to be equal or more to the size of this. Over here, the middle sound is shorter. It doesn't have this, only has this. Da, da, da. So the tekiah can be shorter. Both tekiyahs have to match the middle sound in each line. This tekiah has to match this. Now, by the way, this and this equals 9 little sounds and 3 middle-sized sounds are equal. So da, da, da is equal to da, 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 da. It's 9. Just want to give you a heads up. Also, you cannot make any interruption between this sound and the middle sound, or the middle sound and this sound. If by mistake, as he was trying to blow this, he blew some other sound, then he has to start over again. Just it's good to know these things. Now, important is that when the tekiyahs are, when they start blowing, from the time until the actual 100 tekiyahs are sounded, from the first till the 100, no talking. So you can't talk for quite a while, unless it's about the shofar itself. But you cannot talk unless you're davening. Davening's okay, Tillim is okay, but you cannot, besides davening and Tillim, talk from the very beginning, the first sound that you hear before the Shmona Esrei, until the Shmona Esrei is over, when you finally finish 100 sounds. Now, after davening is over, the custom is to do again 30 more sounds. In case someone came to shul late and missed the first 30, we do it over again for them. So it's really 130. But you don't have to hear those last 30 sounds if you don't want to. 100 sounds is what we want to hear. And no talking, this is what people don't always know. You'll see if you look at the men downstairs, you shouldn't be looking at them, but if you look at the men downstairs, you'll see no talking. No, they say no, which is also probably wrong to do. but there's no talking from the very beginning of the first sound till the end of the sound, till the end. The reason for that is because the brachas that are made, the 3 blessings that are made on the shofar from the very beginning, also are connected to the very last sounds. And since it's all connected, you don't want to make any interruption. We don't blow shofar early in the morning, by the way. Some people think they can do it early in the morning. It's not the proper thing to do because early morning hours is not the time when God's compassion is revealed. So therefore, it's better to do it a little later than do it earlier. But there's a story with the Alter Rebbe, and I can't remember who his opponent was. They had a disagreement as who should win the war between the French War, Napoleon, French-Russian War in 1812. Who should win? And most of the Jews, most of the rabbinical segment wanted that the French should win because they were for freedom, and the Russians were for oppression. The Alter Rebbe was the only one who said no. Yes, it's bad to be under the Russians, but the French, Napoleon was anti-religious. He would bring freedom, would be freedom, and Jews would forget about their Yiddishkeit altogether. And the Alter Rebbe was very strong that, in fact, he actually spied and helped the Russians win the war. He sent out a spy, Moshe Meisels, and that's why the Alter Rebbe was given a very high, he was loved by the Russians at the very end of his life. He was highly respected as one of the greatest citizens of the land. Now it says whoever blows shofar first gets what they want. If you're talking about 2 tzaddikim. So what happened was the opponent of the Alter Rebbe davened extremely quick. But the Alter Rebbe beat him because the Alter Rebbe blew shofar before davening. He knew how vital it is, so he blew shofar before davening, and therefore the French actually lost. And the Alter Rebbe got what he wanted. I want to tell you that the Tkiyas, I'm just going to share with you, it's quite incredible. It's a Halacha class, but I'd like to just discuss what kind of atmosphere it was when the Rebbe was here, physically. No words to describe. The 770 shul was 1/4 of the size it is now. And yet it was like 40 by 40, not even less, probably 30 by 30, 30 by 40, just not too big. Maybe just twice the size of this room. And you had 3,000 people crammed inside. Figure that one out. And it was quiet. When the Rebbe blew, it was quiet. The silence was deafening. And it was just a sight to see, all the preparations that Rebbe was doing. He was using, different shofars, and he was covering it in a special way. Shofar was covered while he was blowing. And I do remember one year that the Rebbe had a very difficult time in blowing the last sound. It took 45 minutes to get out the tekiah, which is the easiest one to make. And they tried to give the Rebbe a different shofar to use. He refused. I'm going to get the sound out of this one. They say what happened was there was a fellow who didn't have children for a long time. And he saw the Rebbe's agony of trying to get the sound out. He made a hachlata to do away with his TV. Because he felt that it wasn't appropriate for him to have a TV. Kids were watching the wrong things. And he made that hachlata, saw the Rebbe's agony, and he thought, Rosh Hashanah, make a good resolution. The moment he made that resolution, the Rebbe's skiyas went. Chayshal bracha, a while later, he went to, when the Rebbe used to give out wine at the end of the Fabrengen to people, who had the Fabrengen and people who weren't. So he came when he passed by, he came with years later, he came with his child. His wife conceived right after the story of Rosh Hashanah. And he passed by the Rebbe with his child. The Rebbe said, that's the Tkiyas child. In other words, I was trying to blow to bring that bracha to you. It didn't work. Sutton was holding back because you needed to do something. You need to make that resolution. As soon as you made that resolution, I was able to blow and give you the bracha of having children. Fascinating story. I do remember myself a personal story. I'm not that tall, and especially, and I'm not that big. And you have thousands of people surrounding you that are taller than you, bigger than you. And you wanted to get a good place to watch the Rebbe blow. It was an incredible sight to see. You would like, the Rebbe's face was red. You see all the, energy he was putting into it. And the holiness of the time. Shofar blowing is what arouses mercy. And it's an incredible Rebbe's shofar. It's coronating Hashem as king. It's a tremendous experience to watch. Of course, to hear the shofar, but also to watch the Rebbe. And I got a very good spot. I got up early in the morning, got a very good spot. And I was so proud of myself that I had such a good spot. I was patting myself on the back, figuratively speaking. You see, if you try hard, you make it. And I thought, but maybe I'll get pushed around afterwards, because people come later and it gets more and more crowded. As it gets closer to the time when the Rebbe is blowing, it gets more and more crowded. I held my ground, and I was not in the first row, I was in the second row and the third row, but I could still see quite close. The Rebbe's over here, and I'm 15 feet away, 10 feet away. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, so as the Rebbe was about to blow, someone comes in from left field, gets up late, and he just pushes through the crowd. Everyone falls. I fall all the way back to the back of the shul on the floor with 50 people on top of me. And that was I not only did I not see anything, I couldn't hear anything because I was on the floor. People were on top of me. So it was a horrible experience. I felt so down. I decided the next day, I'm not even worthy of even trying. I'll just take the back seat so I won't get pushed around. What happened the next day? The exact opposite happened. I was giving up on even trying to get close, and at the last moment, I got pushed to the front, which tells me that when you have this feeling of, feeling good about yourself, that's not the kind of feeling you have to have when Shofar is being blown. When you feel brokenhearted, that's the prerequisite for having the experience of a good Kiyah Shofar. You know the famous story with Baal Shem Tov? Baal Shem Tov story with, No? Zev Wolf Kitches? Okay. Story goes like this. One of his students of the Baal Shem Tov, his name was Zev Wolf Kitches. He was a very, very special chassid, and Baal Shem Tov would always blow shofar every single year. One year he gave this chassid the honor and the schus, the merit that he should blow, but on one condition. That you go through all the Kabbalah, all the Zohar, all the esoteric things that we have in Chassidus, and you memorize it. And unless you have that all in your mind while you're blowing, if you forget anything, haven't learned all the deep things you have to concentrate on while you're blowing, what you're accomplishing, upstairs in the heavenly cosmos, you're not qualified to blow. You take upon yourself this challenge? Yes. And he started learning a month ahead in advance. And, the very end, he put down in notes all that he prepared. Because it was a lot of material. So he wrote down the notes, put it in his pocket. He thought he did. And in case he forgets a few things, he'll just check his notes again and then blow. So it's right before Kiyah Shofar. Baal Shem Tov is waiting. Everyone's waiting. And he just takes out from his pocket, but there's nothing there. And he starts panicking. Right pocket, the left pocket. Starts tracing his tracks. Maybe I dropped it over there, I dropped it over here. No. And what happens when you're waiting and people are waiting for you? No. The Rebbe is waiting. The Baal Shem Tov is waiting for your tkiyah. And he gets so panicky that he gets a total amnesia, forgets everything he learned. And they're forcing him, no, blow. He's watching the Baal Shem Tov looking at him. He takes the shofar and he's shaking like this, and he starts blowing. It's Kiyah. And he says, I can't wait to get over this ordeal. I have betrayed my Rebbe. I have forgotten everything. Condition was met. I didn't. And he starts blowing and blowing, and every sound he was broken to pieces, like a broken piece of earthenware. Finally, at the very end, he goes into hiding. He's so embarrassed and so ashamed of himself that he betrayed the Baal Shem Tov, that he goes into hiding behind a whole bunch of people. After davening, Baal Shem Tov is looking around and he's looking for someone. He's looking for him. And Baal Shem Tov points. And everyone says, he's pointing at you. It was worse than he ever thought. He thought he could hide. He runs over to the Baal Shem Tov, falls on his feet, starts screaming and crying. Rebbe, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. Baal Shem Tov says, stand up. Gives him a smile and says, forgive you? I'm coming here to thank you. I want to let you know that every single mitzvah has a chamber in Shamayim. Whether it's a mitzvah, whether it's song, shira, tshuva, Torah, every single good thing that you Jews do has a certain chamber that has its own key to open up that chamber of incredible spiritual energy. And I visit all those chambers. But there's one thing that has the master key to all the chambers put together. And that is brokenheartedness, which I witnessed when you were blowing. I felt it. I sensed your brokenheartedness. And I got the master key, and I had a Rosh Hashanah I never had before in my life. Thank you, Reb Zev, for giving me the best Rosh Hashanah I've ever had. You can imagine the roller coaster. He went from feeling like a broken piece of earthenware to feeling, whoa. He just made the day for the Rebbe. And that was such an incredible, so we say Rosh Hashanah is also like that. The Chauffeur is very narrow, but your blow is a very narrow. It's a narrow, you don't blow from the wide end. Nothing comes out that way. You blow from this side, but it comes out from the wider end. So if you start Rosh Hashanah with brokenheartedness, not depression, not sadness, but resolve to change and become, just a different person, Hashem responds in a very open way. He opens up all channels for you, materially and spiritually. Min ha-mesa, from anguish, I call on Hashem. Anoni ba'Amerika. His response is, whoa, I never expected that. But also the Gemara says, if a year starts off with a little anguish, doesn't go exactly the way you want, don't worry. That's a good sign. Good sign. Sometimes you need that feeling of, not sadness, not melancholy, but respect for the day. Yes, we have bitachon that Hashem will, but we have also that feeling of anguish, suppression a little bit. And that's important for Rosh Hashanah. Somebody stole the shofar and blew it, and you heard it. Are you Yotzei? What do you think? You have two answers, yes or no. The answer is yes. The person who blew is not allowed to make a bracha because he got it through stealing. But the reason why you fulfill your obligation is because by hearing, what's the mitzvah, to blow or to hear? The hearing is the mitzvah. Of course, you can't hear without blowing. But the mitzvah is not to blow. The mitzvah is to hear. So if a person who can't hear blows shofar, he's not Yosei, even though he blew. If you can't hear your own sound, person is deaf, God forbid, that person has not fulfilled his obligation. And if he hasn't fulfilled his obligation, neither has anyone else fulfilled his obligation. Because the person that's blowing can't hear, so his kiyah is worthless. So the mitzvah is to hear. The mitzvah is to hear. By hearing the shofar, are you stealing? The guy who's touching it, who's blowing, maybe he's stealing. But the person who's listening is not stealing. You're not holding on to the shofar while you're listening. So you're not doing a sin by listening. If you're not doing a sin by listening, the mitzvah counts for you. The person who blew, he also fulfills the mitzvah because the mitzvah is not the taking of the shofar in the hand. The mitzvah is hearing the sound. What he's not allowed to do is make a bracha. Does that mean I can't? How about if I want to take someone else's shofar? I can't find my own, and I want to blow shofar. I'll give it back to him. I want to borrow without permission. That's okay, by the way, as long as you put it back where you took it from. Because we assume that the person who you're borrowing from would be very happy to know that through his shofar, a mitzvah is being done. So it's not considered stealing. Yes. Can't hear that, my friends.
That is like one of the big American.
Right. That's why you can't make a bracha.
Okay. But if you think of, I'm thinking because, for example, on Shabbos, if you do it there, you can't benefit from that.
You cook on Shabbos, right? That's different. If you cook on Shabbos, you can't eat that food.
Yes, the idea that benefit from something wrong, opposite benefit and not other benefit.
Good question. So very good question. The answer is the benefit of shofar is not a benefit. Only physical benefits are considered. It says mitzvahs are not here to benefit us. They're here as a yoke on your shoulders, on your neck. It's not here to benefit from. In fact, if I say, I hereby vow not to benefit from so-and-so, no benefits. If he ever wants to give me anything or help me out, I decline. You're allowed to hear shofar from him. But you're benefiting, you're doing a mitzvah. That kind of benefit is not counted as a benefit, only physical benefits. A mitzvah benefit is not the same. So if you want to do a mitzvah with something that, even though it came through a sin, so the bracha can't be recited. But the person who's listening to the shofar, he didn't do any aveira. He's just listening to the shofar blowing, so he would be yosef to his obligation. Yeah. Again, what's the question?
We can make a bracha on the shofar. Why doesn't everyone say amen?
We do.
Sure.
Sure. And by the way, if you want to hear shofar, and a man who already heard shofar wants to blow for you, he cannot make the bracha. You make the bracha. And he answers amen. If you're hearing shofar from someone, that person does not make the bracha. You make the bracha. Maybe that's why there's no amen, because you're making the bracha yourself. So if the women hear a shofar from a man, then they all make the bracha. If the person who's blowing for you has not fulfilled his own obligation, then he makes the bracha. But if he's doing it just for you, since women are not really obligated to hear the shofar, of course everyone wants to, but the obligation is only on men, and therefore, if a man already fulfilled his mitzvah, he's doing it only for women, he's allowed to do so, but the bracha should be recited by the women themselves, and the man can answer amen, I guess. What? Okay, bracha is Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tivanu l'shmoa, not l'shmoa kol shofar, to hear the sound of the shofar, and not just to hear, but to also register. Okay, now I wanted to add a few more things here. What's the size, the minimum size of a shofar? How small can a shofar be, and it's still counted as a shofar? This size, big enough that when you blow, you'll see the end of the shofar sticking out. Even if you have larger hands, as long as there's a handbreadth in length, it's kosher. A shofar that is cracked to the length, so here you have a shofar. This shofar will be cracked, even a small crack going downward, it's puzzle. Why? Because when you blow, the crack will get bigger, and ultimately it won't be a shofar anymore. So even though it's still good, but if your blowing will cause the crack to expand, which is the case when the crack is going downward, that's what's going to happen. If you have a crack this way to the width, if it does not go through the entire circumference of the shofar, but just less than halfway, no problem. If it goes through the majority of the circumference of the shofar, the crack, not a hole, a crack I'm talking about, then it could be a problem if the crack is less than a handbreadth from the beginning where you're blowing from. If the crack is over here, then we don't really care, because as long as this part of the shofar is good, we don't care about the rest. It never got severed, so the shofar is still kosher. So again, a crack to the width is not as bad as a crack to the length. I don't think these questions are going to come up, but it's good to know, some basic rules in the laws of shofar. When's the earliest time you can hear shofar? Although you're supposed to hear it a little later, but the earliest time you can be yotze is sunrise. If you're really in dire situation and you're not going to have a shofar later, and then you have it now, as long as it's past dawn, you're good. But to start with, you want to wait for sunrise. Could a woman blow shofar for herself? No problem. You know how to. No problem whatsoever. And she can make the bracha too. Oh, we make two brachas, by the way. L'shmoa kol shofar and shechiyanu. I forgot to mention that. The second day Rosh Hashanah, just like the mentioned in the other class with the new fruit that we eat the second night, because it's questionable whether we're allowed to say shechiyanu the second night. Why is it questionable? The second night, Rosh Hashanah, on the Kiddush, we say Shechiyanu, but it's highly questionable whether we're allowed to. And likewise, the second day, Rosh Hashanah, shofar blowing is also highly questionable whether we're allowed to blow shofar, whether we're allowed to say Shechiyanu on the second day. Why is that? We never say Shechiyanu on the same mitzvah twice in one day. On the same mitzvah. So when you said on the Kiddush, you sanctify the holiday Rosh Hashanah this year, Monday night, you say Shechiyanu, the next night, Rosh Hashanah is not considered a new night. I mentioned in the last class, Rosh Hashanah is different than all other holidays. The first 2 days, it's a 48-hour day. The second day and the first day are considered really like one day. There's a reason for that. If I get to it today. There's a reason why the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are considered a 48-hour day. Therefore, if you already said Shechiyanu on the first day, whether it's on the Kiddush or on the Shofar, you can't say it again the second day, according to some poskim. To eliminate the problem, so women who also when they light candles, they say Shechiyanu on the candles, the second night they wear something new. The second night you should wear something new, and the Shechiyanu is on that new beautiful garment that you bought for yourself for the holiday. So therefore, there's no question on the candle lighting, because you're saying Shechiyanu, you have in mind the new beged, the new garment. Likewise, when the person who's blows shofar on the second day, for him to be able to say Shechiyanu 2 days in a row, which is really twice in one day, he has to wear something new as well. So whoever's blowing shofar wears something new on that second day when he blows. When they make Kiddush on the second night, they will have a new fruit that they haven't eaten. Instead of a new garment, men are not into garments so much, only when you have to blow shofar. But for the second night Yom Tov, they will, right after the Kiddush, when they say Shechiyanu on the Kiddush, have in mind that new fruit they never ate that year. So the Shechiyanu is going on the fruit, even though you're saying it after the Kiddush, sounds like it's going on the Kiddush. If the new fruit is in front of you, it's fine. And that's what we do. The halacha is, if you don't have a new fruit, if you don't have any new dress or whatever, you say Shechiyanu nonetheless, because the halacha is that we could say Shechiyanu twice, even though it's the same day. But there are opinions that say no, we'd like to satisfy all opinions, but if we don't have a new beged and you don't have a new fruit, you would say Shechiyanu nonetheless. Let me ask you, what is the difference between Rosh Hashanah 2 days? I mean, how is Rosh Hashanah different than all other holidays in terms of the amount of days that we keep it? Yes.
2 days also.
Very good. But as I said before, it's not just different.
Also in the holiday.
Yeah, but what's the reason for it? What is the reason why Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos keep only 1 day in Israel? Why is Rosh Hashanah kept 2 days? Why is it different? Anyone know? What's the reason why it's different? You're right, but why? The rule is like this. In the olden days, we didn't just go by the calendar, but in order for the beginning of the month to be established, witnesses had to testify they actually noticed the birth of the moon. If it was cloudy or nobody witnessed the moon, Rosh Chodesh would be delayed 1 more day. Why is that? It can't be delayed more than 1 day, but it could be delayed 1 day. How long is a month? It's not 29 days, not 30 days, it's 29 and a half days. And 29 and a half days and 40 minutes, to be exact. That's the cycle of the moon from one Rosh Chodesh to the next. So what do? Can't make a 29-day month or a 30-day month only. So we alternate. Some months are 29, some are 30. And it adds up, it evens out. Sometimes we have an extra 30-day month, and sometimes an extra 29-day month. There are some years where we have an extra 29-day month, and sometimes we have an extra 30-day month. In many years, it alternates. This coming year is actually a leap year, so we're going to have a 13th month. And I believe we're going to have 7 or 8 30-day months and only 5 or 6 regular 29-day months. Anyways, on the night of the 30th, the night of the 30th day of the month, could either, in the olden days, could either become the first day of the next month, or it could still be the 30th day of the previous month. On the 30th day, it depends. The witnesses can notice the moon, it's not so cloudy. They go to the basin and they testify, I so-and-so and I so-and-so have witnessed the moon, and they're not let so easy. They're drilled, interrogated. Really? Where did you see it? If it doesn't fit with astronomy, because the court knew the calculations of where the moon should be sighted. If they claim they saw it somewhere where it couldn't have been seen, either they're lying or making a mistake or confusing it with something else, and they're rejected. So they're interrogated. It has to fit. It has to make sense. But let's say it does make sense, but they really didn't notice anything. In other words, they couldn't. How about if they just claimed they noticed it and they really didn't? It also wouldn't be Rosh Chodesh. The witnesses have to come. If they don't come and testify, then that day remains the 30th day of the old month, and the first day of the new month will be the following day. So there's always a question. Now, people living there in Israel knew right away. They knew right away when Rosh Chodesh was. So by the time Pesach came around, which is 2 weeks later, when is Pesach in the month? Middle of the month. When is Sukkot? In the middle of the month. Even Shavuos is also 5-6 days later. So people would get the news. You didn't have all the modern technology we have today. You had to have witnesses actually traveling to tell people, and they would get around to all the places in Israel, but they didn't get to the diaspora. So people living in the diaspora did not know when Rosh Chodesh was. They did not know when the beginning of the month was. If you don't know when the beginning of the month is, then you don't know when the 15th of the month is, when Pesach is supposed to be observed, or Sukkot, or Shavuos. So therefore, they had to wait an extra day, make an extra day Yom Tov just in case. We still keep that custom today, even though today we have the calendar and we don't go by witnesses anymore. We keep the custom of our ancestors to keep 2 days out, 2-day Yom Tov. But Rosh Hashanah, on the other hand, is on the first day of the month. So even people in Israel didn't know, because you can't travel on Yom Tov. You can't travel even by walking too far outside the boundaries. So nobody knew when Rosh Chodesh was. And therefore, and Rosh Chodesh is Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is on Rosh Chodesh. It's the first day of Tishrei. So nobody, even in Israel, really knew when exactly the holiday began. So they have to keep 2 days. But why is it even in the diaspora where we do keep 2 days? It's a different kind of 2 days than the 2 days that are kept throughout all the other Yom Tovim. It's a 48-hour day. All the other Yom Tovim are 24 hours. And we just keep both to be on the safe side. But they're considered 2 separate days. Rosh Hashanah is considered to be one long day. That's a very intricate subject in Halacha, and I don't want to get into that right now because it'll take too long. Why Rosh Hashanah, even here in diaspora, it's a different kind of 2 days than the 2 days that are kept for all the other Yom Tovim. And that's why it becomes a shiloh whether you can say Shechianu on the second day, because the second day is really not the second day, it's part of the first day. And you already said it the first day. You can't say it twice in one day. All the other holidays, the second day is a new day. So it's new. If it's new, you can say Shechianu again. One last thing I know. What does the word shofar actually mean? It means a pipe. Shofar in Hebrew is a pipe. It has to be hollow. The idea is that it's a hollow, can't be made out of bone. You drill a hole through it. It has to be something that's naturally hollow, because the idea is that our sounds go straight up to Shemayim, no blockage. So the word shofar has the etymology of shoferet, it means a pipe. hollow, open, area where the sound can go through without any blockages. It's good to know what shofar means.